A very good morning to everyone. I welcome you all to the third session of this masterclass series. Today, the discussion is on hardware asset management, how to bring all your assets under one roof. My name is Prem Maheshwaran. I'm a ServiceDesk Plus product expert. I've been with Manage Engine for more than 8 years now, and I have installed implemented ServiceDesk Plus around the world for various customers. All right, so before we dive into the discussion, I would like to give you some tips on GoToWebinar. If you'd like to ask me any questions, go to the GoToWebinar control panel and to the questions section and leave your questions there. If you'd like to initiate a chat, go to the chat section. All your questions will be answered at the end of this webinar. A quick overview of the masterclass schedule. Today is the 13th of June and we are discussing hardware asset management for the cloud version of ServiceDesk Plus. The next session for the cloud version is on the 20th of June, and the topic for discussion is software asset management, one app for all the other apps. All the sessions will be recorded. The slide deck and the recording will be emailed to all the registrants in a couple of days after this session. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda for discussion today. The first point that we are going to discuss is handling a hardware vulnerability. And then we'll see how you can bring all your assets under one roof. And finally, we'll see how you can assess the impact of a vulnerability with the help of asset management. And the last section would be question and answers at the end of this presentation. Right, so today we are going to take a situation and we are going to see how asset management can help mitigate the situation. Right, I believe you guys have heard about the vulnerability called Spectre. It was revealed last year, January, by common vulnerabilities and exposures. Right? Spectre is a hardware level vulnerability. Pretty much all the modern processors manufactured after the year 1995 is affected by this vulnerability. So there is an architectural flaw in the processor that can be taken advantage of, right? So people can hack into your system and take the data out. In order to fix this vulnerability, you may have to upgrade the firmware of your hardware, patch the operating system, and also upgrade the browser versions. Right, so it's a combined fix. You have to fix the hardware, the operating system, as well as the software that runs on the machine. So all that has to be updated. And this kind of requirement is where asset management comes into picture. So only when you have a very good asset management in place, you can do this work without any trouble, right? So you need to have a well classified repository of all your assets, categorized by processor types, categorized by operating system types, and also should list all the software that runs on that machine. All right, so identifying vulnerable assets is not that easy. The first challenge that we have is heterogeneous asset estate, meaning you have a diversified asset estate containing different types and makes of machines. You've got MacBooks, you've got Linux machines, you've got Windows machines, and also servers, routers, printers. So it is a heterogeneous system. All right. Then the next challenge is the source of information. So all your assets are stored in different places, meaning you have a list of assets in your spreadsheets, you've got another list in a document, you've got purchase orders that are stacked in your safes. So there is information scattered around everywhere. You don't have one source of truth for your asset repository. And finally, you don't have the real-time asset status as of now. So you procured the assets some 3 years back and deployed it in the finance department, and you do not know how it is performing now. What is the hardware configuration? Is there any change in the hardware configuration? How many software are running on that machine? All that are real-time information that would be helpful in analyzing issues. So that is not there. All right. So, but what if we can get asset visibility? Wouldn't be that great? Right? So that is what we are trying to achieve. So we need to get complete visibility of the asset, monitor the asset status, right? We should know what is the current status of the asset, who is using the asset, what is the hardware configuration right now, was there any upgrades, what is the operating system, was it patched properly? All that should be updated. All right. So once you have a very good visibility, then you can leverage existing IT assets, meaning you will completely know how many assets are properly in use. If some of the assets are lying around without being used, you can reclaim that and repurpose and deliver it to a different user. right? You don't have to keep buying new assets as and when you have new resources in your organization. Instead, you can leverage the existing IT assets when you have a very good asset management practice in place. And finally, you should also manage your asset contracts, right? Contracts are different types. You have warranty contracts, lease contracts, annual maintenance contracts. All these has to be kept up to date and renewed, because when an asset fails, we have to instantly check the contract and contact a vendor to get it serviced or replaced, right? So it should be kept alive. All right, so it is possible to single out risky assets, right? So we are going to see how we can single out the risky assets and patch them when you have a situation like Spectre in place. The first thing that we have to do is create an asset library, right? So we need to create a hierarchy and then place the assets under folders so that it would be properly organized and classified. Once we have that, it will be easy for us to extract a report from the organized repository so that we can quickly identify the vulnerable assets, track and manage the assets. So once everything is tracked, once everything is identified, you can quickly initiate a remote probe to know the hardware details and software information, and we can quickly track the asset. And finally, we can evaluate the maturity of the asset. So what is the useful life of the asset and how far it has gone, right? How much life is left for the asset. So we can evaluate the maturity as well. All right. So without any further delay, we can see how you can bring all your assets into one roof, all right, with ServiceDesk Plus. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use the enterprise edition of the cloud version of ServiceDesk Plus. Okay, so this is the cloud version. And let's go to the asset page and take a look at what's available there. All right, so this is the asset homepage. So by default, assets are classified into two types, IT and non-IT assets, right? So in the left side navigation pane, you'll find all the classification. So under the IT assets, you have got different product types. Product types denote the form factor, all right? So printers, routers, servers, based on the purpose of it, it's classified there and stored, right? So you can keep adding more to this list. Right. So these are called as product types in ServiceDesk Plus. And if you'd like to add more to this list, you need to go to the setup page. Let me quickly go to the setup page and then search for product types. All right, so it's under customization, asset management. So that is where product types are stored. So these are the default list of product types that are available in the application. So these are available out of the box. All right, so if you take a look at here, it shows the product type name. So like keyboards, printers, projectors, these are product types, right? And then the type of it, whether it's an asset, component, software, or a consumable. And then we categorize it by IT and non-IT categories. So if it falls under IT, then it's a managed asset. So we're going to scan the asset and bring information about the asset into ServiceDesk Plus. Right? So if you'd like to add a new product type, or if you'd like to extend the list, click on new product type, and there you can provide a name. So I'm going to call it iPhone, right? Type. So this is where I can choose whether it's an asset, component, or a consumable. So in my case, I'm going to go with asset. All right, and the category is IT and non-IT. All right, so if I choose IT, I'm going to lose a license because the licensing model of ServiceDesk Plus works based on the number of technician logins and the number of manageable assets, right? So if I mark a device as an IT asset, it is going to take up a license and I can scan the asset and bring the information into the system. All right, so since it's a mobile device and scanning is not supported for mobile device, I'm going to go with a non-IT category, though it is an IT device. All right, so once I do that, I can select an icon or import an image to show it in the classification and save it. So now I have created a new product type. Now let's go back to the asset page and see if this product type is reflecting there. All right, let's refresh this page once. Okay, so let me expand the non-IT category, and there it is. So I now have created a new product type. So this is how you can create new product types All right, so the product type can belong to an asset category, consumable, or a component. Okay, and it can be under IT or non-IT categories. So once I do that, the category is now created, the product type is now created. The next thing is to add assets under this product type. So if you'd like to add a new iPhone, all you have to do is click on the new button here, and that'll load a page where you can provide a unique name for the iPhone and then add it. So this works good for single assets if you're adding just one or two assets. But what if you have hundreds of assets in a spreadsheet? So you already have given away hundreds of iPhones to your executive members and you have the record in a spreadsheet. How can I bring it inside the system? So that is where Import Wizard is going to help you. So go to the Import Wizard, all right, and then choose the file format. We support CSV, XLS, and XLXS. All right, choose the appropriate file type, locate the file, and then click on Next, and that will import all the data from the spreadsheet into ServiceDesk Plus. So the import wizard is available for all product types. If you have a list of workstations, if you have a list of laptops, you can still bring that information into ServiceDesk Plus with a click of a mouse. All right, so that's how I can import data in bulk. So this holds good for retrospective data, which is current data that is already available in your spreadsheets. But what if you want to know the current data, like the real-time information about the asset, the hardware details, the software information? So that is where we need to probe the asset and inventory it. So I'm going to take you through a different section, probe and discovery. Right. So ServiceDesk Plus Cloud resides in our ecosystem, a cloud ecosystem, right? So we cannot initiate a scan directly on the computers that's in your offices. So what we have to do is deploy a local piece of software. So we call it as a probe, okay? So if you have multiple offices in different geographical locations, you can add probes for different sites, okay? You can provide a name for the probe. For example, if you have an office in New York, I can name it as NY, choose the site as New York, and then add. Right, once I do that, a new probe has got created for my site New York. Now I can download the probe. Once I click download, it'll download an MSI file, which can be installed in one of the Windows computers in my New York site. So that will be working as an agent for my ServiceDesk Plus Cloud version. It will reside locally in your premises. It will scan all the workstations, fetch the hardware and software information, and push it to the cloud where ServiceDesk Plus resides. All right, so this is the first step that you have to do if you would like to get real-time information about the asset. In case of Spectre vulnerability, we need to know the processor type. We need to know the operating systems that you currently have in your environment. We need to know the browser versions. All right, so all that can be collected only with remote scanning. Right, so the first step is to create a probe, download the probe, and deploy the probe in a local machine in your site. The next step is to create a credential library. All right, so in order for the probe to successfully scan the machines available in your network, we need to have the credentials that are required to access the Windows machines. We need to have the credentials that are required to access your Linux and Mac machines, and also the credentials for SNMP devices. So that is where credential library plays a role. To add new credentials, click on the New Credentials button. Choose the type of the credential. These are the 4 types that are supported. So if it's a Windows machine, go with Windows. For Linux machines and Mac machines, go with SSH. For SNMP-based devices, you can choose the appropriate category. Right? So once done, I can provide an alias name so that I can quickly recollect what credential it is, a username and password for the domain, so that I can, which has administrative privileges over all the machines there in your domain, so that I can seamlessly perform the scanning operation. Right? So the credentials that are stored under the credential library are irreversibly hashed and stored. So it's a secure storage mechanism, and the credentials are used only for scanning the assets. So this is the second step that you have to perform towards probing the assets. The third option is bringing all your domains under ServiceDesk Plus, right? So if you have a Windows environment where you have a domain controller, then you have to add the domain. Click on New Domain, select the probe, all right, that I have created for New York. So I'm going to go with the domain controller in New York. Okay, so let me call it as nyc.com. Provide the domain controller information. So if you have the IP address or the domain name or domain controller's name, provide it here and provide credentials to access the domain. So this credential is for read operations on the domain controller, the Active Directory, right? Any user who has read privileges on the Active Directory is sufficient. Once you provide that, and also you can choose whether you need to scan the software on Linux and Mac machines. So after choosing all that, you can save the domain. So this holds good for all your Windows machines and computers in your domain. So this is the third step. The first one is to create a probe. Second one is to create a credential library. Third one is to list out all the domains that are there in your organization. The fourth step is for network devices. Right? So that is where network scan comes into picture. So you might have a lot of network devices like routers, switches, printers, even coffee machines that support SNMP, right? So if you'd like to scan those, you need to declare your network here. So it can be the complete subnet or a range of IP addresses, right? You can provide the start and end IP addresses and then choose the probe, which has to be used for the scanning. Choose the credentials that will be used for different machines in the site in New York. All right, so it even scans the Windows machines. All right, it accesses the Windows machines and then fetches information using the credentials. All right, so I can provide all the credentials that are required for accessing various types of machines. And there is one more option that is very interesting. So there are few assets like servers which holds confidential information and also has a regulation that it should never be scanned. All right, so there will be sensitive servers in your offices that you'd not like to scan. Right? If that is the case, you can exclude those devices from getting scanned. You can add those IP addresses here, and those will be skipped from the scanning operation. Right? So these are the 4 important steps that you have to do in order to perform a successful scan. Right? Create a probe, deploy the probe in one of the local machines in your site, create a credential library for the various types of devices available in the site, list out all the domains and the domain controller information, declare the network and also the credentials that are required to access various devices in the network. And finally, you have got one more important option, the SCCM integration. So if you use Microsoft SCCM, then you can fetch software and hardware information directly from SCCM. Right? That can also be done. And finally, I've got settings for the discovery option. Right? So in ServiceDesk Plus, the uniqueness of a machine is identified by the service tag or the serial number. If it is a Dell machine, we go by service tag. If it is other makes and models, it's going to be the serial number, right? So any machine will be overwritten during the scan based on the service tag information. So if the service tag matches with the scan information, the data that is collected by the scanning will be appended to the existing asset by matching the service tag. But at times, if a computer has undergone a repair or a replacement of a motherboard, or if it's an assembled computer, the service tag is not going to be unique. It'll be a dummy service tag, something like 1234 serial number or to be filled by OEM. Then the uniqueness criterion is getting affected here. So in such case, you can skip service tag whenever it's identified by adding it into this list. So in that case, MAC address will be taken as the next unique identifier of the machine. Right? I can enable MAC address identification. It'll check for the uniqueness of the MAC address and it'll identify that as an individual machine. So the settings can be configured with excluded devices as well. So you can exclude devices from getting scanned. If there is a new make and model of the machine that you have added to your network and ServiceDesk Plus cannot identify what is the make and model, then it will be listed as an unknown OID. All right. So once an unknown OID is detected, you may have to manually update the product and product type, meaning the class of the machine and the model of the machine under here. There is also a scan script available for both Windows and other machines. So selfscan.exe is the scan script. You can download it and configure it as a GPO in your Active Directory. So once it is configured as a GPO startup script, whenever a computer is started, this script will get executed and it will collect the hardware and software information and push it to the probe. Probe in turn will push it to the cloud. So these are the settings that you have to do in order to scan the machine successfully. All right, so if you have got any questions, you can leave the questions in the question section and I'll answer it at the end of the demonstration. Okay, so now we saw how you can discover the assets and bring it under one source of truth, right? The asset management in ServiceDesk Plus. Now let's take a look at what it detects and what it fetches from the computers, for which I'm going to go to the assets section. Let's expand the IT assets. All right, so these are the different types of machines that ServiceDesk Plus has scanned. So let us go to the workstations. Right, as you can see here, there are there is a machine which is in use, 8 machines are in store, and no machines are in repair. Right, so these denote the asset state, the current status of the asset. Okay, let us go to this in use asset. All right, so from the list view, we can see some information is already available there. So I've got a Windows icon which shows it's a Windows machine. The name of the machine is listed there. The model of the machine is listed there, and also the user who uses the machine is also there available. Now let us go into the machine and see the hardware and software information that we have detected. All right, in the primary page, you get the basic information about the asset. All right, and then the hardware information will show detailed hardware info, the operating system, the BIOS information, the service packs that are there, the physical memory and virtual memory available in the machine, the processors. That is the important thing. So in our case of Spectre vulnerability, we may have to list the assets based on this processor information. So the processor information is there, the number of cores in the processor is available, installed memory modules, network adapter details, disks and drive details, everything is there under the hardware section. So all this information will be helpful when we are working on incidents that are reported. For example, take this case. If a user reports a performance issue, all right, and we don't have any visibility about the asset that is being used, then we may have to probe the customer, we may have to do a remote session to gather the information. But when asset management is in use and if it is in proper state, then users can be asked to report incidents against their assets. Or otherwise, you can associate the assets to the users. So whenever a user reports an incident, automatically the asset will be added to the incident template. So once that is done, the technician who's been assigned with the request can quickly go to the asset, take a look at the hardware and software information. So even the software information that's running on the machine is available here. So all the software that are running on the machine and the installed service packs are listed over here. So now the technician will have complete visibility about the hardware information and the software list. So now if the technician finds an unnecessary software that is running on the machine, or if there is a list of software that is not being so used, he can recommend the end user to uninstall those software and see if the performance improves, right? And also you can get the information about the memory modules available in the machine, right? Even after the uninstallation of software, if the device is slow, he can perform an upgrade of the memory modules and see if the performance improves. So this kind of visibility will help technicians quickly work on issues that are reported by the end users. Okay, so we got the hardware and software information. Further, ServiceDesk Plus can store contract information. Okay, for example, in this machine, there is a warranty contract from HP. Let's go to the contract and see what it holds. All right, so contract information is stored under the contracts tab. Okay, so in contracts, you can maintain different types of contracts. So to add a new contract, click on new contract, provide a name for the contract. Let me go with Mac warranty. All right, leave a description if it's required. Choose the maintenance vendor. I'm going to go with Computer Enterprises. Right, if there is a document available for this contract, you can add it as an attachment to this contract. Now you have to list all the assets that are maintained by this contract. Click on add. It will show the list of all the different types of assets that are in your organization. You can go with, all right, so this is a MacBook. I'm going to choose the MacBook and add this asset to the contract. So now this asset is covered by this contract. So if you've got a list of assets that are covered by one contract, you can associate all the assets to the contract. So the advantage of it, so whenever a machine fails, for example, if it is completely crashed, you can quickly check the warranty, contact the vendor, and then get the asset serviced or replaced. Right? So it's essential for us to keep the contract alive. Right? So when you're adding a contract, you can also choose the validity of the contract and the maintenance cost. Right? I'm going to go with $2,000. Right? So all these are inputs that you can provide under the contract form and store it as a contract and associate it to assets that are covered by the contract. The next step is to enable notifications to my asset manager. So before the expiry of the contract, I would like to notify my asset manager. Right? I can choose my asset manager and choose the number of days before which he has to be notified. So I'm going to go with 15 days, save it. Once I do that, before the expiry of contract, before 15 days, my asset manager will get a notification. He can quickly check the contract, he can contact the vendor, and then get the contract renewed. Right, so that's the advantage of making use of the contract. Now let us go back to the asset page. All right, let me open one of the assets available here. Right, and then go to the financials. So the financials section will store all the cost information. So there is a purchase module available in the asset management in ServiceDesk Plus. All right, so you can make use of the purchase module to place orders with your vendor, receive the items, and directly add it to the asset repository. So if your IT team is taking care of all the IT purchases, then you can make use of this feature. To add a new purchase order, all you have to do is click on new purchase order. All right, and under the setup page, under asset management, you have got a vendors list. You can maintain a list of vendors who are supplying resources to your organization, asset resources to your organization. So in my case, I've got two vendors. I can choose my vendor, choose the site to which I'm going to make the purchase, right? Choose the billing address. Okay, once I do that, the currency in which I do the trade is also automatically fetched. Choose the product that I'm going to purchase from this vendor, and then the price should automatically pop in if I'm storing the information on the product. So I'm going to go with $4,000. The tax percentage can be stored as a default value. So under this customization in asset management, you have got the option of storing default purchase order values. So the tax rate can be stored there. I'm going to procure some 2 or 3 assets. Okay, and the total value is calculated and showed in the purchase order. Okay, once that is done, I can also choose the cost center and the GL code for this purchase, provide the signing authority, and save the purchase order. Once I do that, the purchase order will get created and a notification will be triggered to my purchase order approver. And after the approval, you can contact your vendor to place the order, receive the items, make the payments, and add the items directly to the asset repository. So when you do that, the cost information will also get added under the financials section. All right, so if you'd like to do it ad hoc per asset, then you can click on add cost, choose the cost factor. I'm going to go with purchase cost. Right, I'm going to say it's $2,000. The date of the purchase can be mentioned here, the description if it's required. Once you save, the purchase cost gets added here. Likewise, I can also add other cost factors. Okay, so if you would like to run a report at the end, you can get all the cost involved in maintaining the asset. The total cost of ownership is $2,900 for this particular asset. So you can see how much you're spending on each and every type of asset. All right, so based on that, you can take informed decisions if you'd like to do an upgrade or procure different types of assets in the future to expand, right? And also ServiceDesk Plus can calculate the depreciation of the asset. So if you'd like to dispose the asset, and during the disposal, you can calculate the depreciation and salvage value and recover cost by disposing the asset. So all this while we have been disposing asset, and the cost of disposal is never retrieved properly. But if you'd like to retrieve cost and add it to your IT budget, the best way to do is calculate the depreciation and also find the salvage value. By making use of that information, you can retrieve costs by disposing assets as well. So to configure depreciation, click on this one, configure depreciation, choose the acquisition date. All right. So there are two options. You can set up a depreciation type by the asset, or otherwise go with the product type or the model. All right, I'm going to go with per asset. There are 4 types of depreciation calculations available, which are widely used in the industry. I can choose one of the types that works for your organization. Choose the useful life. I'm going to say 60 months. Salvage value is going to be like $300. Save. Once I do that, right, so it will calculate the annual depreciation for the total useful life. If you'd like to dispose the asset in between, you will know the exact value of the asset and how much it has depreciated. All right, and then you can dispose the asset and retrieve the cost and add it to your IT budget. So it also works for monthly as well. All right, so these are the information available under the asset section. These are the information that you can manage for an asset, right? The hardware, software information, the contracts and financials, and finally, it also holds the history information. Right, so whenever we scan a machine, it stores the scan history. Let me go back to another machine so that I can show you some data. Right, go with this one, which I've been working with. Go to the history section. So any information that we have fetched by the scan will be automatically listed there. Okay, so and also there is a state history which holds the ownership information. Right, so whenever there is a hardware or software change, it will be listed under the scan history, and whenever there is a ownership change or if there is a change of state of the asset, it will be listed under the state history. So if there is any previous user who has used the machine, it will be available there under the state history. Right, for now the asset is in store. Let me move it to in use. So in store denotes that it is not being used by anyone. It just resides as an asset in the IT desk, right? So if you'd like to provision this asset to one of your users, you have to change the status to in use. When I do that, I'll be given 2 options. One, I can associate the asset or assign the asset to a user or department, right? I can choose a user and then deploy the asset to the user. Or if it is a server which is going to be used by the entire department, instead of choosing a user, I can directly choose the department and assign it to the department. All right, and also I have got one more option, leasing the asset internally. So projectors, VPN tokens, which will be leased internally to your employees, can be chosen with this option. You can provide the lease period as an input and save it. So once you do that, the asset will be internally leased. The next option that I can do to put an asset in use is to associate it to another asset. For example, printers to desktops. So printer is a manageable asset, but no one associates a printer directly to a user. Instead, a desktop machine can be associated to a user, or a laptop can be associated to a user, and in turn, the printer can be associated to the desktop or laptop. So that is where you can use this option. I can choose one of my printers and associate to another asset. All right, so these are the statuses that can be used to denote the life cycle of an asset. All right, so these are customizable statuses. So if the asset is going to be taken away from active usage, then you can mark the asset as expired. When you do that, the license that is taken up by this asset will be released. All right, so if it is going to be removed from active service, mark it as expired and release the license, and you can apply the license for managing a different asset. But the historical information, the hardware and software information that is already stored in the application will never be removed. So if you want to go back and check the asset information for future planning, you can always go to the asset and check the details. All right. So if the asset is going to be completely sent out of your office, from outside, out of the disposed out of your premises, then you can mark the asset as disposed. All right. And also you can mark the asset in repair if you have retrieved the asset to send it for to be sent for repair to your vendor. All right. So this kind of information can also be run as a report. So if you'd like to find how many assets are in repair state, you can quickly run a report, get the data, and then accelerate the process of the service. All right. So you can quickly contact your vendor and ask the status of the in repair asset, get it replaced or serviced on time. That's the advantage of making use of statuses. And if you'd like to add more statuses, go to the setup page, all right, and click on asset state, and that will help you to add more statuses. So these are the default ones. As per the practices that are in your office, you can add more statuses and make use of it to denote the life cycle of the asset. Okay, so let's go back to the asset tab. Okay, so now what we have done so far is probe the asset, right, with the help of scripts as well as the asset probe. We have collected the hardware and software information. We now know how to allocate an asset to a user, how to put it into use, all right, how to associate the asset to another asset, how to see the hardware and software information that resides on the asset. All that is now easier with the help of probing and scanning. The next step is to group the assets. All right. So let us go back to the situation that we were speaking, the Spectre vulnerability. In that case, I would like to know all the machines that runs on Intel processors, all the machines that are running on AMD processors, all mobile devices that are running on different processors. So I need to know the information about assets by processor, by operating system, by browser, etc. So that is where asset groups will help me. So here, if you take a look at it, I have created a group for Intel processors. All right. Once I click on it, it will quickly list all the machines that are running on Intel processors. I have even created a group for Spectre issues, which lists all Intel and AMD processors. All right. If I want to see all the machines that run on Windows operating systems, I've created a group for it as well. Right. So that is where group will give you inputs on quick lists of the devices by various types. So now we can retrieve information about vulnerable assets quickly. To create a new group, click on new group, provide a name for the group. I'm going to say Linux machines. All right, it's going to be a dynamic group. You can choose the criteria. All right, save it. And that should automatically fetch any machine that runs on Ubuntu operating system. Right, likewise, I can keep creating groups. So if I want to create a group for Mac machines, I can do that as well. I'm not sure if I have a Mac machine in place. Let me quickly check that. All right, so that is how it is done. So I have created a group for machines that run on Mac operating system, and it fetched me the MacBook right away. All right, so this will help me to create different lists and identify the vulnerable assets as quickly as possible. Right, there is one more important option available in ServiceDesk Plus, that is barcoding of assets. All right, so if you'd like to track the asset internally with barcodes, you can do that with ServiceDesk Plus. You can generate barcodes or use the existing barcodes on the machine. Right, every device comes with a default barcode, the serial number that is provided by the OEM. If you'd like to use the barcode for tracking the asset, you can make use of it with the first option. Or if you'd like to generate your own barcodes, you can choose the product type, workstations, choose the product, let's say MacBook Pro, all right, and then I've got two options. I can sequentially generate barcodes, print the barcodes, and affix the barcodes to the machines, or otherwise I can manually create a barcode and save it on the machine. All right, that will help me to tag a barcode on all the machines that are in my organization. The advantage of making use of barcodes, ServiceDesk Plus has mobile applications, right? So you can download the mobile applications for both iPhone and Android platforms free of cost. Once you download it, you can configure your application URL in the mobile app. And after doing that, you can make use of the assets part of the mobile app, which can scan the barcode and fetch the asset information if it is already scanned. So this can be put in use when your field engineer visits your data center, right, for a troubleshooting activity. So let us assume that you have got a server room where you've got a lot of rack servers, all right, and your service engineer who is visiting the server room wants to know the hardware and software configuration, wants to know what applications are running on that server before he pull the plugs off. All right, so that is where barcode scans will really help. The field engineer can now use the mobile application to scan the barcode on the rack machine, and once he does that, it retrieves the hardware and software information from the application, and it shows what applications are running on that rack server without even having to log into the system or calling someone to check what's running on that machine. He can get real-time information making use of the mobile application, retrieve the information, and once he is very sure that it doesn't have any critical applications running on it, he can pull the plug and start his troubleshooting work. Right, so that is the advantage of having barcoding of assets. Okay, so these are the different sections in which you can manage the asset. There is a separate section for software. You can even manage your software and software licenses. So that is the topic for discussion in the next session of the masterclass. All right, so these are all features available in the asset management module. You also have a lot of reports available out of the box that you can run against the assets. So computers, servers, there is a huge list of reports that you can make use of to extract reports against the asset, and also you can make use of the dashboards. So there is an asset dashboard which will show you a quick summary of all the assets that are available in your application that has been scanned and inventoried. That will give you the key performance indicators against the asset management practices. You can make use of it to improvise your asset management practice. All right, so assessing the impact of a vulnerability, right? So configuration management database is all about using it for problem analysis and also assessing the impact when you are going to take informed decisions for your change management practices, right? In case of Spectre, all right, so we now know that every computer in your organization is affected, but we cannot go with the same approach for all the type of assets. So we have to prioritize our fix, correct? So we have to identify how many servers are in a very critical state, meaning it contains sensitive information and also it is in risk, right? So we have to identify all those critical assets, what is the impact that it is going to cause. Also, I need to know how it is interconnected to each other to deliver what service. So that's a kind of an information which is very, very critical for taking informed decisions can be stored only in configuration management database. So configuration management database is going to give you centralized view of the IT infrastructure. All right. It also shows the dependencies between the IT and business. And also you can effectively plan for failures, right? So when you are going to perform a change activity, you can quickly know how you can plan the downtime, all right? And then you can go with the change activity, right? So with configuration management database, you can ensure the business continuity. So the business, you can build the asset relationship and store it as a configuration. So let me quickly explain you what a configuration first, right? So say for example, if you want to deliver email as a service, right? So in asset management, everything is a server or a computer, right? We do not care about what value it delivers to your business. We just treat it as a hardware. But in configuration management database, the purpose of the asset is stored. So it is classified as an email server, right? And also, in order to deliver email as a service, it has to speak with a lot of other assets. For example, the email server requires a backup server, right? The email server requires a database server. The email server requires a router to exchange data. The email server requires a support team who has to work 24/7 to fix issues, right? The email server is consumed by all the departments, right? So the department has to be connected to the email server, right? So it has a network, it's part of a network as well. So now we have got a lot of components in this configuration. So put together, it delivers email as a service. So that is what a configuration is all about. And every element of this configuration are called as configuration items. Even human resource configuration item. All right, so now you can store the relationship that exists between different assets that together delivers a particular service. You can identify critical components in the configuration. For example, if you're going to perform a router update, you will now know that email service is going to go down when you do that. You will now know how many departments will be affected when you pull the plug on the router. All right. You will now know who to be contacted when the email server goes down, the support group and the responsible person who is there in the support group. All right. So you can identify the critical components that are there in the configuration. You can map the critical path. So if there is a sensitive data flow, the graphical view with configuration management database will give you the map of the critical path. So when you are working in problem analysis, you can check the various points of failures by checking the configuration management database. And also you can create a very good rollout and backout plans for change management if you consume configuration management database. So no more hidden trapdoors. CMDB in ServiceDesk Plus is going to establish transparency, and it's going to give you a bird's eye view of all your assets. Right, so let me take you through configuration management database. So CMDB, that's the tab. So once you go there, you now have a similar classification as you saw in asset management. But this time around, it's going to be a little different and it's going to be a little detailed, right? For example, server was a product type in asset management. But here, you can expand this product type and see the different types of server that are there. So based on the business purpose, based on the purpose and nature of the value that it delivers, it's further classified as backup servers, file servers, mainframes, Unix servers, Linux servers, etc. And this list is customizable once again. So these are called as configuration items. All right. So now you can further classify the asset into different types and store it based on the purpose that it delivers. All right. For example, this particular server. So that is the first thing that you have to do with configuration management. So we have to create a detailed list of configuration item types, CI types, right? And then put the assets under appropriate classification. And once you do that, the next thing that you have to do is create relationships between the assets, right? So let's go with this example. So this particular asset. So as you can see here, it gives you basic information about the asset, the number of changes that are pending, number of requests, if there are anything pending in that. And then you can go to the relationship tab. All right, so it manages one asset. There is a vendor. All right, it's backed up by another asset. You have got another server. So all these are interconnected assets. So this is a list view of its relationship. Let's take a look at the map view, because the map view will give you a very graphical representation of how the relationship exists. So this is a server located in rack 1, manages CFI Africa, right? And it's backed up by another server. And if you want to add more relationships, all I have to do is click on the asset, click on add relationship. All right, it'll show all the suggested relationship. I can even choose from one of the custom relationships, which is customizable once again. If you want to add more relationship types, you can do that and make use of it in configuration management database. All right, I'm going to say exchanges data add. So when I hover the mouse, it exchanges data with another machine. All right, so I can further add relationship to this particular machine. I can say located in. So this way I can keep adding relationship and interconnect assets that together deliver a service. And now this is called a configuration. So people who say that it's very complex to build, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Start with business critical assets. Configuration management database is essential only for business critical assets. Don't try doing it for desktops. That's going to be a very painful process, and we don't want that kind of information for desktops. Only for high impact assets. All right, so like a router, like critical printers, like servers that are consumed by a lot of people. So that is what requires configuration management database, and it will be really helpful when you are going to do a change management against the configuration. So if you want to make any changes in this configuration, then you have to perform a change activity. That is how we have to approach it. So any configurational change requires change management practice. So you have to come up with a plan, you have to get it approved, you have to do the implementation in a sequential order, you have to do a post implementation review, and then close the change whenever if you'd like to change any configuration here. All right, so that is what configuration management database can do, and it can be consumed by problem management as well as change management and even incidents. All right, so when you are doing problem analysis, if you'd like to know the points of failures, so this map will let you know how the data is flowing in the critical path, and that will help you with problem analysis and to figure out the points of failures. All right, similarly, when you're doing change management, when you want to do impact analysis, this map view will let you know the impact that this machine is going to cause when it is taken down, right? How many resources are consuming this particular device, all right? For example, here it can be associated to people, all right? I can choose a department, right? So when I do that, it's associated to a group of users. So when the asset is going to be taken down, the group of users will be affected as well. So that is what configuration management database can help you with. Now you got the answer. Now you know the difference between an asset and configuration management database. So assets are just hardware or software, but configuration management database gives it a purpose. A software becomes an application, an asset becomes a configuration item, right? A configuration item can run a business application that is used by a lot of people, that exchanges data with a router, it exchanges data with a database server. Put together, it's called a configuration, and if you want to make any changes, you have to perform change activity. So that is what configuration management database is all about. All right, and it is not so complex if you start with business critical assets, and every environment needs configuration management database. If you want to stick to good change practices, if you want to know the business purpose of a collection of devices that is delivering a business purpose, then you should make use of configuration management database. So I would like to share some best practices as part of this discussion. So with regards to asset management, make IT asset management work with other idle processes, consume asset management for incidents. So make it mandatory that a user has to submit the asset against which he is reporting an incident. So that way, historical records of incidents will be stored against the asset. So if you want to take a look at the asset, you'll know how many incidents are reported against it. Right? Count the cost. Make use of the cost module to calculate the total cost of ownership, and that will help you to make good decisions when you're going to upgrade or purchase new assets. So if a particular asset fails frequently and if the total cost of ownership is very, very high, probably you can try with a different make and model. Keep tabs on the metrics that matters. Make use of all the reports that are available out of the box, and also make use of the dashboards to know the current status of your asset management practice. Build your inventory with different data sources. You can collect information from various data sources and put it under asset management. That way, asset management will become the one and only source of truth for all the assets that are in your organization. Track the complete asset lifecycle with the help of asset states. Build your asset states and make use of it to mark the current status of the asset. So with regards to configuration management database, identify CI types. So you have to create a very detailed list of CI types based on the nature of the asset and the purpose of the asset. Discover the baseline, meaning choose the critical asset against which you want to create the relationships. Assign CI ownerships. All right, so you have to create an owner and then assign the owner to the CIs. So just in case if a server fails, you will know who to be contacted to fix it. Right? So define the map and CI relationships so that you can connect the asset with other components that are there in your organization. Make your CMDB work with ITSM. Once again, consume it for problem management and change management to take good decisions, and track the key metrics with the help of reports. So I have created a group of reports that you can run for various purposes, right? For budgeting, for purchasing, resourcing, discrepancies, and license. So I'm going to share this slide deck with you all right, in a couple of days. So you can take a look at these reports and make use of it to improvise your asset management practice. All right, a quick update on the masterclass session. The next session is on the 20th of June, and the topic for discussion is software asset management, one app for all the other apps. And it's going to happen across 4 time zones: 3 p.m. AEST, 11 a.m. BST, CDT, and PDT. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.